My next guest is Dave Hanson. Dave is the president of H2b, who is the founder of this TechCon conference that we're at. And you've been doing this for how long now?
The conference we started in 1995 or 1996.
Okay, so a long time. Yeah, I applaud you. Now go back to the other one. Tell me, why did you get in this industry? And your industry is H2b is a lab, so you're in the chemical side of this thing. Are you a chemist?
I am, by training.
Oh no, you were the people I ran from when I was in college. I was an ME, so the chemical department.
There we go. Yeah, by training I'm a chemist. And you know, my getting into this industry was serendipity, truthfully. I was at the local university at CSU Sacramento, and the local utility, SMUD, had in 1972, this was before I was involved with it, had a transformer failure where someone was killed.
Ooh.
And they were, just devastated by that, and they'd heard about work that was going on. And SMUD was very progressive utility, right? They had nuclear, they were at the geysers, they had geothermal, they had hydro projects and solar. So they were into everything. They knew about work that was going on in Europe with this gas business, right? I mean, Buckle's information goes back to 1919 or so, but they knew about it, and they knew the work that was going on. And so they came to the local university to develop a safety test, just to be able to detect these gases and save a life. And so they did, and curiously, that project was developed. They knew which gases they were supposed to look for. They went out and tested like the first 2 transformers just to see if it worked. And oh, what a glorious day it was, because one of those transformers had all of the gases in it. And so the test worked.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, that transformer failed very shortly thereafter, was on an intertie with PG&E, and this project grew from 1 utility to about 200 utilities in the next couple of 3 years. That project was running full on about the time I was finishing up my graduate work, so I needed funding. And they said, oh, well, here, come do this. At the same time, the university president was being checked out by the chancellor, and they discovered that what should have been research was beginning to look like a business, and so it was chased off campus. And a company was formed, Analytical Associates. I was part of the project. I joined Analytical Associates, thought I would last a year or two. That company ran for 17 years, was put to rest, and then H2b was formed. So there's this long connection between SMUD, the university, and all of this testing,
That's a long time to be in that same space. And so what have you seen change in that space? I mean, it's way different then, because they knew the gases, but today we know a lot more. We have a lot more of the diagnostic part, not just the chemistry anymore. Now we're doing the diagnostics and the analytics part of that.
That's right. Interestingly, at the time that this was being developed, there were still thermal conductivity meters, right? And GE and Westinghouse were the big players, and so, they were pushing this idea of just measuring the gas blanket. But we realized that there was a lot more than safety involved in this, that there was diagnostic value, and that started to get put together. It's certainly evolved over the years. Had trouble selling this even as a test in the early years because people just didn't think it was worthwhile. Right. But a number of changes have come through the industry, right? Reliability-centered maintenance, other kinds of changes that have come through the industry have helped kind of shape people's view. Condition-based maintenance, has become more and more of a reality for people, or they've pushed it further. And the capabilities that we can offer as chemists has gone a lot deeper, right? It's not just simple chemistry, but now we're talking about looking at this as a material science, where we're looking at really all of the components that are inside of a transformer or other electrical equipment, and trying to decide how they will present themselves into a sample and how we can use that information diagnostically. So that's really been the evolution, and we see it as a business by the failures or by the challenges that were presented along the way. And I think those challenges and what we're presented sort of keep up with how the industry changes.
Yeah. So I want to go there now, because I think today, from this conference that we've seen that we're now coming to the end of, I've seen some challenges, and I'm a transformer guy. I'm passionate about transformers. And when I find people are shooting my transformers or trying to blow them up or trying to throw a Molotov cocktail at them, it just offends me. I told my wife last night on the phone, and I just said, and I was kind of poring over these people trying to kill. She said, "It's not people, honey. It's okay. It's not people." And I said, "But it's transformers. You don't understand how important this is." The industry is changing a lot, and part of the changes, kind of we all expected, but we didn't expect them as rapidly as we're seeing them now. We have a demand curve issue going on with transformers. I'd like to have you talk a little bit about that. We also have a supply problem with transformers. The two of them are meeting to create unprecedented times. One of our earlier interviewees used the word existential crisis.
Okay.
That's a big deal. See, I talk about that when you think the world is ending, but he said it's an existential crisis. That means it's a big deal. Talk about where you think the industry, meaning the utility industry, where the industry is right now.
Well, I think that it's caught up in all of these there's sort of some legacy issues, right? Where, the corporate knowledge was getting up and walking out. The particular selection of people that they were hiring to fill certain tasks and requirements in the industry, all of that's sort of been problematic. I think there's been a shortfall of people, to fill these roles for a long time.
At the craft level and at the senior engineer, at every level.
Absolutely. And now, when you see the challenges rolling out as quickly as they are, I'm amazed at the number of new talents or skills or experiences that we need to bring in. Like the protection of the substation from terrorists or whatever.
Right.
All of this stuff, or from the internet. All of these things that one wouldn't have foreseen in, say, 1985, now are sort of mainstream realities. And, you put on top of that, policy decisions that say, oh, well, we're going to do this grand thing, right? We're going to electrify this state,
We're going to electrify the world.
Yeah. In the next 10 or 15 years, it's like, holy smokes, I see nothing but huge challenge. If we don't get the money in place and we don't do all the right things to make it happen, it will be a challenge. I was asking this question of a gentleman the other day. With all this backlog, I've watched transformer manufacturers cycle back and forth and sometimes get murdered in the cycles, right? Yeah. But I was asking, are people considering building new plants? Are we going to scale up the production of transformer manufacture to meet this kind of demand? And the demand is changing. We're seeing, we have relationships with manufacturers, and we're seeing, wind now becoming a huge part of what the manufacturing requirement is. So there's plants that are just almost dedicating their whole production, or a significant part of the production, to that. I see tremendous challenges, and I see tremendous opportunity at the same time.
Yeah, well, if we could, it's existential if we can't solve them and get the opportunities.
Certainly.
So the demand curve is that could be a political side. We could have a political change, and suddenly the demand curve, the money's not there, and
right.
Everybody's going to have to slow down. The damping down of the demand. The supply side of it to me, is what is unique, is that everybody's trying to do what we're trying to do. It's not like the Germans aren't trying to electrify. They're right next to Ukraine.
Sure.
They don't have much trust in buying oil from somebody that wants to take them over, right? So there's just this whole geopolitical change that's going on that we seem to be separate from, because it seems like the world is saying we're going to electrify. It is the way to go because climate change, because we want clean air.
Right.
It is decarbonization. I think we talk about it a lot. I don't think we really understand the critical nature of what we're talking about. So one of the things about the workers is, coming into the industry and working in a transformer factory or being in a substation working for a utility was not the sexy thing to do.
No.
Coming into an industry that is decarbonizing the world and making it safer for your potential children might be a little bit more sense. So we have to reposition our thinking with this next generation. You're doing something that is generational. Oh, but there's still a transformer guy, right? Get the point. You could do that too and say, you're coming into a lab and what you're doing is making things better and safer for the future. Switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about TJ. Is it okay if I use TJ? Because
Sure.
I don't do all the letters.
It's too many.
Okay, there's way too many letters.
And by the way, that name was, we hired a consultant to help us with that name.
And paid them a lot of money.
We did, yeah.
I know there's a company right now that has renamed itself, and I know they paid a lot of money, a large company, and they went for New Green, and whatever the word New Green was. And I was at a speech that I was making, and I made fun of it, and I realized, oh no, they like that. I'll call you TJ. You are one of the most respected labs for utilities in the industry. There's some people, specialize on industrial and commercial. You all, by far and away, have a great name. You are global. Let me ask you a little bit about that. How did you get global? Did you go and build labs? Because I'm really not familiar with that, other than the fact I know you have labs. I talked to Herman, and he was in, I think, Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a lab in Peru.
We have a lab in Peru,
Okay.
yeah.
And then at one time he was over in Asia somewhere.
Yeah, we have lab in Malaysia, and one in the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that all happen? When did it happen?
I would like to tell you that it was a well-designed plan.
Okay. If you have to tell me it isn't, we publish it, people will know that it
I
wasn't.
understand that, but the truth is, as has been pointed out in this conference, we are a relatively small community of people. And I'd say a close community of people. And that association, interestingly enough, is what brought us to various parts of the world. So we had a connection through a transformer manufacturer here to a transformer manufacturer in Australia. Okay, and it's a long story, but anyway, they called us and they said, years and years ago, they said, we'd like to put a lab in with our factory. How do we do that? And then I happened to be going to Australia, so I visited them. Fast forward 5 or 6 or 7 years, and we bump into them again, and they're still interested. So then we said, well, we could do something together. Right, so opportunity just kind of presents itself through these associations. We've acquired some labs sometimes. We've done other kinds of things, but it's all been through this association in this network of people that you know so well.
Mm. One of the things that you get is a ton of data.
Yes.
You are testing transformers all over the globe. That's great data, and we now live in a world where the base of AI, let's not even do AI, let's just do machine learning.
All right.
The base of machine learning is data.
Yes.
And here you are with all this data. That could turn into tremendous diagnostics, analytic, decision-making data, because I keep using the term decision data. I can look at it, I can make a decision based on what you give me. It could be a chart, and I can see from the chart, red, I make a decision. What are your plans, or what do you think is going to happen in the terms? And is TJ going to be involved in that in terms of machine learning and taking a whole class of transformers globally that you can say, hey, here are the commonalities that we see?
Right. Yes, we will certainly be
I knew
involved
that
in that.
If you said no, Dave, I was going to be upset.
But what's interesting about it, and so I hope somebody does hear this. What's interesting about it is how a client views the laboratory with regard to what I'd say a broader sharing or partnering of information, right? They get our reports and they go, and then that's the last we hear from them sometimes, right? And so in order to get the best correlations, we would love to know the complete disposition of equipment, right? Even if it just happens to be retired because it doesn't fit in that location or that application anymore. We would love to have all of that. We would also love to have, test data. If people are going out and doing electrical tests or doing any other kind of test data, because we, believe it or not, although we're chemists, we do understand a little bit of it, and we can use that in our diagnostic process to help sort out not just the kind of a fault it might be, but getting down to individual phenomena, right? Because faults, every different kind of an arcing fault inside of a transformer is a different phenomena, and it presents itself differently. If we have a turn-to-turn failure, we may never see more than 100 parts per million of acetylene. But if we have another kind of arcing event, we could have 1,000 or 2,000 ppm. So it's very phenomenological. So we would love to know, all of the information if possible. And you talk about relay information, you talk about SCADA, you talk about all these tests. If we could have all of that, to peek at with regard to this data, we'd be so rich.
Oh yeah, and they would be so blessed because you could put that, they're housing it. Are they using it? Because if they're not able to give it to you in one place, then they're, and you know that. I've been into plants and you say, show me your data, and they're on, it's in a file cabinet somewhere, and you're going, okay. You don't even trend it, and that's another thing, trending data, that's how we tell whether things are, some of the trends are longer term, especially overheating. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Acetylene, ethylene, overnight, right? But long-term trends, that's just as important. I love the idea of stepping outside your chemist's comfort zone and looking at some of the electrical testing data, because you're right, they all correlate, they come together. That would be a real blessing to the industry, because now think of that if you could take that data from all over the world and begin to use some predictive tools. Hey, we saw this in your transformer, and we've seen this around the world. We would suggest these tests, or you consider this. You're going to be much more proscriptive on behalf of your clients in a much better way. So I'm with you. And I think if I were a client or if I were a lab, that's what I would be doing. I would be coming to the sense of data. I said it, machine learning, AI, there's a lot of stuff out there. And I think AI is having, my son is in the movie production business. He does special effects. He actually won an Emmy. He won a BAFTA, and he won a Academy Award for special effects for different things. He thinks AI is going to put his job out of business, because there's some stuff happening in his industry that you're going, oh my goodness, because studios want to cheat. They want to just, they don't want to pay for that. And I kind of chuckle. I said, it won't put you out of business because you've got all these awards, and you will just be using AI and having some geeks that put it together. The fact that you can focus on data and from that data make predictive analysis, predictive analytics, proscripted. Everybody has to keep, particularly their transformers, longer than they have, because they can't get them, right?
Right.
And you're right, manufacturing, transformer people, I guess it was in the 1980s and 90s, everybody was over, they were all built these factories and they had no work. Suddenly it's like flat. And they started closing the factories. Now we're saying, oh no, open the factories again. And they're going, yeah, right. Let me get through this cycle right now. But I don't think this lead time problem is going to go away. We're going to need more production, because it's a hockey puck of demand.
Right, and I think you're right. I think the cycle, because we're looking at these wind farm applications as well as as just load growth in general, I think you're absolutely right. And so the curve, the shape of the curve, the length of that rise may be longer. I don't understand the monetary side of building all of that. I know there's not huge margins in making transformers, but it seems to me that that's a very reliable form of business. It's absolutely essential. I mean, this is the core of the nation. Everything runs off of electricity, and there's still a huge part of the world that's not electrified. So it seems like there's just tremendous opportunity out there. I don't know how many they should build, but yeah.
Build one less than the marketplace needs, and you'll keep the margins higher. Build one more than the marketplace needs, and then they'll start to bid you down, right? They do that. Let's switch gears one more time. I want to go back to TechCon. I applaud you for consistently, all over those decades, for bringing TechCon to the marketplace. It is, people say, oh, it's really good, it's a smaller conference. That bothers me a lot, because what I heard here should have been heard by a lot more people. I mean, it was just, I don't think there was anything that and I had to break away and do some of these interviews, but of all of the things that I was involved in, I just thought the content was excellent. The marketplace, your clients, the utilities came and shared. We need to get that message out there. We need to broaden that message. Instead of being a bigger conference that makes it harder to maneuver, let's be gunboats and doing that. But what are your plans for I just told you what I want, but what are your plans for TechCon in the future?
Well, as long as this is working, in this size and this framework, I think it's ideal, because we can focus on a host utility's particular concerns, and we've been doing that. I want to say that part of our philosophy actually started when PG&E was a prior sponsor, and the conference was held in San Francisco
a decade ago.
At least a decade ago, yeah. And so we started it with that, trying to shape the conference to the particular needs of the utility, because every utility has a different, profile of needs, and then try to bring in, the program parts, but maybe also the training parts, and if useful, even some consultation parts. Bring in people who can, sit down with a host utility and talk about perhaps things are a little more sensitive than what they'd like to talk about in public, but happy to sit down and talk with experts about it.
It works. I wish we could tell more people about it, but that's a different, well, actually, you know what?
What?
We just did.
We just did.
Okay. Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan.
Having me.
Much appreciated.